Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Maulana Sulaiman Ravat show here on ITV. Inshallah, tonight it's a show that many of the wives will be watching with keen interest as we'll be discussing and giving tips to a lot of husbands on how to have a successful marriage. Joining me for the show will be Maulana Sulaiman Ravat. Maulana, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Muhammad, and to the viewers. Normally when we talk in favor of men, then ladies are a little bit upset with us. Today we're talking about what men should be doing. So I'm sure our female viewers would be very happy, and men should be happy as well. They shouldn't be upset. When we normally talk about marriage, I always mention this point that let's not make it a tit for tat. When we're addressing women, then women should listen with a keen ear and a sincere heart, and they should think to themselves that, look, how can I improve as a wife? And when we're addressing men, they should also listen with a keen ear and a sincere heart, and they should ask themselves, how can I improve as a husband? Otherwise, it becomes very petty. Whenever you talk to women, they say, but what about the men who do this or who don't do that? And when you talk to the men, then they say, what about the women who don't do this or don't do that? So each one is kind of waiting for the other. Each one is only willing to acknowledge on proviso that the other one is more guilty than they're guilty, and you just go in circles. So, in life like that also, employer, employee, whatever the relationship, each one should, say, okay, let me introspect and see how I can improve myself. Because in the end of the day, I have to answer to Allah for my deeds. My spouse or the opposite party in any relationship will have to answer for their deeds. So let me not be as focused on what they're supposed to be doing or not supposed to be doing as compared to what I'm supposed to be focused on what I'm doing and what I'm not supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to be doing whatever I need to do. So I think it's with that spirit that we should let the discussion flow.
So it will be with an open heart for the men to listen. Sometimes that men don't really like to listen. Maulana, we're living in a very fast-paced world. Everything moves at a very fast pace. We're all working. We're very busy working. We're very busy in our own lives. Sometimes we take this spending quality time together for granted. Our phones are a problem. The TV is a problem. Why is it so important for the husband and wife to just have that quality time that they need to spend together?
Because as human beings, we need that intimate connection. We have every other connection. We've got the Wi-Fi connection and we've got digital connections, but we don't have that intimate connection to the extent that we require it. And sometimes it's only when you, much down the line, that you don't realize or you realize what you don't have and what you need to have. Like a home needs a constant flow of electricity, a constant flow of water, these days a constant flow of internet connectivity to be able to function as a home. As a human, you need regular, intimate connection. And intimate connection is not only in the form of sexual relations. That's just one part of it, an important part of it, but just one part of it. At the end of the day, it's much more than that. Now, every era comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. This era here has made it easier for us to communicate, made it easier for us to travel, made it easier for us to digitally connect. But emotionally connecting has suffered a bit of a setback as a result of that. And the reason is that maybe 30, 40 years ago, if you went for a business trip and you were out of the home for 1 week, you could only speak to your wife in an audio form, on the telephone. Now you can do a video call and she can see you. Maybe then you could only speak to her when you got back to your hotel room or to your place of residence in the evening. Now you can speak to her every minute. You can send her WhatsApp and you can send her lovely emojis and flowers, and everything's for free on WhatsApp, right? You send flowers and you send chocolates and you send whatever. So it has its advantages. But that's a digital connection more than it is an emotional connection. And where the challenge of the era comes in is that when you eventually get that space to be emotionally connected, then technology kind of intrudes. Technology kind of compromises it. So many times the wife will complain that I understand he's had a long day at work. I understand he can't spend 5 hours a day talking to me. He can't even spend 5 hours on a weekend talking to me because there's other things to be done on the weekend. But if it's 15 minutes a day that we're going to spend together, husband and wife, then why should the cell phone come into the equation at that particular time? it's not only digital distraction, it's also mental distraction. Sometimes we do not switch off, we do not leave work at the door when we enter the home. And as a result, the wife is talking, but you're still working out something else. You're still fretting over some argument that took place in the work environment earlier that morning. You're still working out what you're going to do tomorrow and how you're going to deal with this client and how you're going to respond to the boss. Quality time is not about quantity. It's about the quality of the time that you do have and the quality that you put into it. And I think that's where this fast-paced life that we live these days has kind of compromised that. We find it difficult to make time in the first place, but when we do make time for each other, it's either there's a digital intrusion or there's a mental distraction where you're not fully there. You are not emotionally present.
Mulana, something that's just come to my mind when you're talking about the connection. What's happened in the last 18 months? People are working from home. So basically, you connected to your boss and you connected to work 24 hours a day. And people are working odd hours. How has that played a part in our connection with our spouses? Because we're on our phone, we're on our computer. There's no distinction between office and work anymore. Everything is happening on your dining room table. So that distinction is gone now. So your work in your office, your work in your home is the same thing.
Absolutely. And I think it's a very important question. To a large extent, or to some extent, I can identify with it myself. COVID or no COVID, a big percentage of my work gets done from home because I'm a radio show presenter who does the breakfast program. So you've got to prep at night, especially when you're doing current affairs. You can't say, I'm going to prep, the morning before, the afternoon before. You got to be as close to current as possible. Now, what would happen is I got a small little office section in my home. So in the morning I go to work. I go to the radio station. I'm there till lunch. In the afternoon is my rest time because it's a very early start and it's a very late end. But now, after Maghrib, after Isha, you're in your office, you got your laptop open, you're preparing for a program. The wife decides to come in and she's sitting. Now she's trying to chat. In a way, it's good, okay? Your wife is in close proximity, she's not in another side of the house. But on the other hand, it's not a connection. It's definitely not a connection because she's talking, you're half listening, you're not listening. At times you are listening because you're trying to respond to an email, you're trying to read a brief, you're trying to, read more background on a particular interview that you're doing. So it led to a point where one of the wife is saying, yeah, but I come sit with you and you're not talking to me. And then I had to tell her, listen, this is actually not family time. This is work time for me. So let's understand how this is going to work. If you just want to be in physical proximity to me, by all means, then come and sit in one side of the same space and take out your laptop and do your madrasa work or your teaching work or whatever. But if we actually want to connect, then I got to take time out. So you're going to come to me like halfway through my session and say, right, okay, I brought the tea is ready, here's the biscuits. Then I got to, close the laptop and turn around and face you and talk to you and speak to you. And then we are emotionally connected and the cell phone is one side and the laptop is one side. And once the time is expired, then I can get back to my work. So it's so difficult in the work environment because they can just pop in at any time. And inevitably what happens is the wife will just pop in. So, what do you think of this color here? I was thinking of buying this color material. Now, she expects full-on attention and cooperation. But for you, that's work time. So working from home has created that dynamic. I know some people who work, only from home. They kind of dress like they're going to work. They kind of give the wife a kiss on the cheek and bid her farewell. And they go and they close the door, and the door remains closed until the work time is over. So until, say, for example, it's lunchtime, then they physically come out and say, right, okay, now I'm ready for lunch and I'm going to perform Zahar Salah and whatever else the case may be. And that is something that perhaps you need to do to ensure, because otherwise the lines become very blurred. I used to have this problem before when I used to have a desk in the corner of the bedroom. So I'm trying to work and the wife is trying to talk. And sometimes she's trying to work and I'm trying to talk, and it blurs the lines. So you have to find something that works for you as a couple. It cannot be that if you're in the same house and if the wife just wants to pop in for a 5-minute chat, that it can't happen. But there has to be an understanding that, look, if you're going to pop in, you must pop in and say, listen, can I have your attention for 5 minutes? Or I'm just going to come sit here because I'm bored in the other side of the house, but you carry on with your work. But if it's dedicated time that is required, then each one needs to disconnect from everything else and connect to each other.
Rana, have we forgotten how to communicate? Bringing technology into the question, before as you mentioned, we had to phone people if you wanted to speak to them, you went to visit. We got so used to LOL and BRB and all of that in our WhatsApp conversations. Have we forgotten how to communicate? And also, more importantly, have we forgotten how to communicate with our wives?
I don't think we have forgotten. I think that we're just too distracted to communicate effectively. So, what is communication? Communication is not only the words. A person can be very eloquent in the spoken word or even in the written word. They can write lovely messages to their wives, or they can say lovely words. They can whisper sweet nothings, as they say. But communication is about body language. Communication is about touch. Communication is about intimacy. So, if you're having a cup of tea with your wife, but you've got the mug in your right hand, you've got the cell phone in your left hand, your whole body language is wrong. You're not communicating, and you're not connecting. But if you're having a cup of tea and you're sitting across each other, or you're sitting next to each other and you're holding each other's hands, or you're embracing, or you're snuggling, or whatever they call it, then that is what we call love communication. Love communication is not necessarily verbal. Love communication is about connecting. It's about connecting emotionally. It's about connecting romantically. It's about coming up to your spouse and surprising them, and just a 30-second massage of the shoulders, a quick hug from behind, or a surprise hug or a surprise kiss, or whatever the case may be. That's communication, and that's the communication I think that has, you can say we have forgotten it, or we say that we have neglected it because we're too focused on other forms of communication. No, but I sent my wife a text, or I sent her a WhatsApp, or I put a couple of hearts, beating hearts there, and now they got all the fancy ones that go in circles and and all sorts of things. Fine, that's good. I'm not saying don't do that. Do that during the course of the day to show that you're in my thoughts. That has become easy. You don't have to go and find a payphone. Yeah. To say, right, I'm going to phone my wife and say, darling, I'm missing you. I'm at home, but I'm at work, but I'm missing you. You can just send an emoji. You can send a quick WhatsApp. But you cannot forget that what the actual communication in a marriage is. Look, many times, most times, you and I are both married, Mohammed. You don't have something to discuss with your wife every single day in a formal sense. You're not going to be buying a new car or a new dress or a new kurta or sending the kids to a new school or discussing budget or discussing painting. Those things happen from time to time, but it's not going to be something that you need to discuss every single day. So what do you go home and discuss? It's banter. It's the usual. Okay, what you're making for lunch tomorrow? What are we going to do this weekend? And you got to use that as an opportunity to connect. So it's not so much about the words. It's not so much about what's on the agenda, because there isn't going to be something on the agenda every single day. Those questions are going to start ringing hollow after the day. Oh, how was your day? Good. How was your day? Good. You have to connect in a kind of physical way, emotional way, where you give each other a sense of sanctuary, a sense of peace, a sense of belonging, a sense of comfort, a sense of reliance. How you do that, there are certain things that are standard and constant. There are certain things which each couple figure out for themselves as they go along in their marriage. But do it, you have to. And you've got to do it in a way where you're fully connected and you're fully focused and you're fully in the moment.
Molana, it's time for our first break. But when we come back from this break, we're going to get more tips from Molana on how to value our times with our spouses. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Molana Sulaiman Ravat show here on ITV. This evening we're discussing marriage tips for men on how to value our time, how to be the gentleman. We're going to come back to being a gentleman later on in the show. So before the break, we were talking about valuing our times with our wives, also effective communication and how important it is to make sure that connection is still there. Molana, so as I mentioned before, we spoke about how to value our time, how to make the connection. Let's speak about more tips for husbands, because somehow I think men are more reluctant to open up and have that conversation. Your wife will somehow still come out and start the conversation. We somehow need that push to start that intimate conversation.
Yeah, the key thing you have to understand about women is many times they don't want you to talk. I just want you to listen. But you must listen attentively. You must listen with connection. So perhaps your wife has had a frustrating day, and I think I've given this example before. The domestic burned the cloak. So you come home one day and she tells you, that brand new cloak that I bought from the Hilton Towers, she burnt it. Okay, I'm so sorry, my darling. Inshallah, so and so is going for Umrah. We'll order another one. And then a couple of weeks later, you come back from home and the wife is again, the domestic burnt, that cloak from Zamzam Towers. I walked up and down. I made 7 tawafs of the building before I found that cloak that I wanted. She burnt it. So you say, darling, fire her then. If she's constantly, burning the clothes, it's poor work performance, fire her. And the wife just looks at you and keeps quiet. And a couple of weeks later, the same thing happens and you say, but I told you to fire her. And she says, but you just don't understand. And now the man scratches his head and he thinks to himself, but what don't I understand? Simple problem, simple solution. If the domestic can't do the work, she can't iron properly, she's burning all your expensive cloaks that you treasure so much, then get rid of her and get another domestic. The wife doesn't want you to give an answer. She knows the answer. She knows that she's got the option of getting someone else. She's already thought about that. She just wants you to listen to her frustration, to comfort her, to make her feel that, there is somebody who understands her frustration. So for men, it's more about listening than talking. Because we have a very kind of straightforward, black and white, compartmentalized approach towards problem solving. Women don't. And it's not to say one is right and one is wrong, or one is better and the other is not. It's how Allah has genetically created us. Our approach to things are different. Women need to speak more, express themselves more. Men speak less. They don't like to express themselves too much. But women want to be listened to. They want to be heard. And not that you say, okay, I understand. No, you got to understand your wife's temperament and what she needs at that particular time. Maybe she just doesn't need you to say a word. She just needs a hug. She just needs you to tell her something nice, not directly related to what she's expressing to you, but overall. So quality time and connecting with your wife is about intentional time. It's not about by the way time. By the way time is there. I mean, you're eating together, maybe you're going to the shops together, you're going on the weekend for shopping together. You may even be going for holiday together, but you're not connecting because you're in the car together with the kids, you driving, she's reading, at the beach, you with the kids there, she's busy here. You're not really connecting. Connecting is about intentional time, and you have to take out intentional time daily. Because how many holidays are you going to go for in a year? How many weekends getaways are you going to go for in a year? How much time are you going to have in the weekends? Because the weekend has its own demands. So it's a kind of time block thing. In your itinerary, in your schedule, daily, you've got to find that 15 minutes. I would say minimum 15 minutes. For me, it's just before my wife goes to bed. I go to bed later. So like I explained before, I leave very early in the morning. So when I leave in the morning, because I have to do breakfast radio, everyone's sleeping in the house. When I come back lunchtime, I am mentally fatigued. So I would have lunch with the wife. The kids are still at school, and then after that, I go for my afternoon rest. Now comes the evening, I'm working because I'm preparing for the next morning. So there's a kind of like overlap there. When I'm available, they're not. When they're not available, I am. And I said to the wife, okay, listen, our time will be that we will have a cup of coffee every night or a cup of tea before you go to bed. So no matter where I am or what I'm doing, if I'm in a meeting, she'll wait for me till I come back, a reasonable time. If I'm in my office, she'll come with it there. And that 10 or 15 minutes is when we've got to connect. Over that cup of tea or coffee, just the two of us, no kids, no gadgets, no nothing. And we're going to speak to each other. If there's nothing to discuss about the house or about the family or about anything, you just talk generally, you connect, you give each other undivided attention. Then, she goes to bed, I carry out my work. If I get done early that day and there's a little extra time, fair enough. But if not, that 15 minutes is blocked. And life doesn't always work in a very procedural kind of way. So if, for example, you had a very hectic week, or you were going out for a week, you were going on a business trip, then you're going to compensate for it and say, right, if I went out, then the following weekend I'm blocking off the entire weekend, or I'm blocking off the entire Sunday, and I'm doing now what my wife wants to do. So, again, I'm just using my example. Every person will have their own example. I absolutely hate shopping. Shopping is just not my thing. If I need something, after GPS, the greatest invention for me was online shopping. I love Take-A-Lot. I would rather pay a little more, have less of a variety to choose from, but do it from the convenience of my phone than having to go to a store and say, right, okay, I need a cover for my cell phone, this one, that one, I think too expensive, I'll go to the next store. For me, that is just a colossal waste of time. My wife, on the other hand, is different. She wants to go every so often to macro, and she wants to then make it a whole experience, and then go to the mall after going to macro, and then have a meal somewhere, and it's a whole Sunday. And for me, it's like, like the whole Sunday. There's so many other things we can do. Why can't you just go to macro in the week, man? Buying groceries is so boring. It's so like routine. What's so exciting about buying groceries? Then unless I needed something specifically, now you got to go to the mall, you're going to start there and there and there and there. I end up sitting in exclusive books and reading. But at some point, I had to realize, look, this is something that my wife wants to do. She needs to do it. Whether I like it or not, or whether I understand it or not, it's something that she needs to do. And she made it very clear. I don't expect you to do it with me every week or every weekend. But every 6 weeks, or at least once in 2 months, you got to free yourself for a Sunday. And we leave 10 o'clock, we come back 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a whole day thing. We go macro, we go ShopRite, we go here, we go there, we have lunch somewhere, whatever she's in the mood for, or what I'm in the mood for. And that's fine. That's what marriage is about. It's about give and take. So I've resigned myself to it. Now and then, if I can get out of it, I won't miss the opportunity. But when she calls it in and says, right, this Sunday, yeah, we're going, then I got to say, right, we're going. It's not something I enjoy. She'll accommodate me in there. Maybe in macro, she'll allow me to sit in the car while she goes to grab the things. In the mall, she won't expect me to tag along shop by shop. She'll allow me to go and get a cup of coffee and sit in exclusive books and browse the books for free. But I need to be part of the trip. Even though she can drive by herself, she's well capable of going everywhere herself. And that's what it is. It's intentional time. It's to put your spouse on the top of your priority list. So work is there, friends are there, hobbies are there, religious work, all of that is there. But you've got to, and this is putting your spouse top of your priority list is part of deen, it's part of religion. And that is what you've got to give, because otherwise you can very quickly drift apart emotionally, and your greatest rock is then compromised, and everything else then in your life becomes compromised. Because if problems start to set in your marriage, it affects your performance at work, it affects your relationship with your friends, it affects your happiness when you're going out doing what you usually like to do, and it just comes back to that. You've got to formally schedule in the time. Not that, okay, if I have some extra time here and there, then I'm going to do it. This is what it is on a daily basis. This is where we find time for each other on a weekly basis. That's how we do it. On a monthly basis, annually or biannually, and that's how you compensate for it. But it's the bottom line is this: put your spouse on the top of your priority list. It's easy to tell your spouse how much you love them. It's more difficult to show them, and that's what we need to do. We need to show our wives that we're giving them priority.
Something that came to my mind again while you were speaking is our circles have gotten so big. So we're comfortable speaking to everybody, and somehow our spouses get left in the one corner where it becomes easier to speak to people around us instead of speaking to the person who's supposed to be the closest to you. So we're sharing intimate things, which is totally wrong. But somehow our wife or sometimes the husband is left in the lurch, and you're hearing things via. And that seems to be a problem that's cropping up as well.
Yeah, your wife's got to be your best friend, bottom line. I'm not saying you can't have friends. Boys will be boys, girls will be girls. There are certain things that when you speak to boys about it, when a man speaks to his male colleagues about it, it resonates better. And when a woman talks to her female friends about it, it resonates better. So when they're talking about a recipe, for example, the enthusiasm with which she will talk about it, unless the husband is a chef, it's not going to be the same that when you talk with your husband. And if the husband is talking about what mags to put on his car, when he talks to his friends about it, there's going to be a different kind of resonance. Or when he talks about, fishing, I caught this one and I did like this and I used that line, or, hunting and we use this rifle. So you're allowed to have friends, and you've got to allow your spouse to develop their relationships with their friends. But your best friend has got to be your spouse. You have to be most friendly and jovial, most jokey with your spouse. It cannot be that you're a different person with your friends and you're a grumpy chacha with your wife, but with your friends you're known as to be a cool dude, laughing, joking, overlooking, accommodating. That can't happen, And the problem is, I think, we don't leave our stress at the door. and we end up treating the people we love the most the worst. Most men love their wives. It's just they don't end up treating them like how they're supposed to treat someone that you love the most. You take it for granted that my wife will always be there. I can lose a friend very quickly. I can lose a job very quickly. I can lose a client very quickly. I can lose, an offer very quickly. So therefore, I tread more cautiously there. But when it comes to my wife, I know she's going to be there. So I take her for granted. I take advantage of her, and that's wrong because it'll eat away at your marriage. You'll tell your customer thank you, with great relish because you want them to come back. Thank you, sir, for coming to our store, for purchasing for us. How often do you tell your wife Jazakallah or thank you after cooking a lovely meal? You're very ready to exchange pleasantries with people outside. How often do you tell your wife I love you? How often do you validate her feelings? Why not do hobbies together? Find common hobbies. You'll have your independent hobbies. She'll do her thing. You do your thing. You don't always have to have the same interest. But find something, at least one thing that you can do together. Talk about random stuff together. Maybe try and stay fit together. So go for your daily walks as a couple. Do your daily exercise. And even when it comes to the aspect of intimacy, as you go deeper into marriage, things can become a little monotonous, a little routine. You learn each other and you know each other. So, Islam does not in any way prohibit you from spicing it up. I don't want to get too graphic. I mean, it's a family TV program. But in terms of speech, the scope is wider in terms of permissibility than what we realize. In terms of doing things to create some flavor, to create some diversity, learning some new tricks. All of that is totally permissible because you want to keep it within a halal framework. So don't wait, for someone to complain. Don't wait for, you always be proactive and say, what can I do differently? What can I do to make it a little bit more spicy, as they would say, so that I lessen the possibility of my spouse being dissatisfied, or I lessen the possibility of my spouse losing interest in doing things just out of routine or habit. I lessen the possibility of me becoming disinterested and then becoming more inclined towards that which is haram. So you've got to make your home a home. It can't be like a hotel where you're living under the same roof and sharing the same space, but you're totally disconnected from each other. Everyone is in their own reality, and that reality is different from the next person's reality. Because your greatest investment is your relationships, and the most important of all your relationships is your marriage. If your marriage is functioning optimally, then you've got that confidence to be able to do everything else in life. So like in business, we strive for excellence. We look at all the minute detail. Let's fix this. The shelf is not straight. This is just not right. This is not clean enough. This is not professional enough. Why? We want to project the best version of ourselves in our professional lives, in our businesses. Why not try and be the best husband that you can be? Not wait for the next person to be the best. You be the best. Why not strive for excellence in terms of your contribution towards your marriage, like you would strive for excellence in other aspects of your life?
Mulana, before we go to our break, we have the perfect example as Muslims of the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we're also so fortunate that all parts of his life were documented for us to take lessons from it, and we all know the type of husband that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was.
Well, Aisha radiallahu anha used to say that, she used to say it in the form of poetry, that lana shamsun walil afaqi shamsun. We have a sun, and the horizons has a sun. So the sun of the horizons rises in the morning from the east and sets in the west. But our sun rises at night when our husband, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, comes home. So she was in essence saying that when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked through the front door at night when it was dark, and in those days there were no electricity, it was like the sun was rising within the home. Meaning he brought so much of happiness, so much of joy, so much of compassion, so much of connection that he brought into the home, that it was like he lit up the house. Like we would say, if somebody walked into the room, he just lit up the room. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would light up the house of his spouses when he walked in at night. And this was a man, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had the burden of an entire ummah on his shoulders, who had an entire community to run, who had economic issues to deal with, military issues to deal with, social issues to deal with. And after all of that, when he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came home at night, his approach, his body language, his words, his everything was such that his wives would say it was like he was lighting up the room. And that is what it's supposed to be. I know that sometimes it's 2 hours of traffic going to work, 2 hours of traffic coming back from work. It's a whole lot of stress. And we tend to think, well, she must understand. When I come home, I just want to be one side. I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want no disturbance. Yes, to some extent, that can be accommodated. Sometimes you come home, you just want to unwind. But you've got to unwind, and then you've got to then also connect. This is another very important part of your life. Otherwise, what percentage of your life is spent sleeping, eating, drinking? What percentage of your life is spending in work? And then what's left for your spouse and for your family? Whereas that is where the true happiness lies.
So important, and as we always say, the best example is the example of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The viewers out there, we're going to take our second break. When we come back, we have another very interesting topic that we're going to get into is how to be a gentleman. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Maulana Sulaiman Ravat show here on ITV. The first two segments of the show, we discussed how to make the most of our time, effective communication, spending quality time together. The next segment or so, we're going to discuss how to be a gentleman. Now, so many times we expect our wives to be this prim and proper, and we want to be slordig, as they say, sloppy. What is it to be a gentleman? Maulana, I just got something that I'm thinking about. I had a grand uncle who was a very grumpy old man. May Allah grant him Jannah. But
Amen.
everything he did, whenever he got out of the car, he always opened the door for his wife. And that's what, it was the sweetest thing ever. He could have been so grumpy and so cross, but he always did that one thing to make sure that, I'm the gentleman out there. How important is it for us to be gentlemen?
Yeah, I think nowadays we may think it's not cool to be a gentleman. It's absolutely cool. It's absolutely Islamic. Maybe the first point is you cannot be ignorant of female biology. You've got to understand that the makeup of a woman is different and a woman functions differently. There are times of the month when she's menstruating and it has an impact on her mood. It has an impact on her approach during the time of pregnancy, during the time of rearing the child, breastfeeding a child. A man cannot be ignorant. He cannot be oblivious of these things because it impacts on both of your lives. You've got to read up on it. You've got to think about it. You've got to reflect on it. You've got to strategize around it. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not shy away from this. So men need to be sensitive to the emotional needs of their wives. That's the first point in terms of becoming a gentleman. Now, everything can't be your way or the highway. You have to understand. Women communicate differently. Women respond differently. Women are in different moods. Women approach things differently. Then the second is in terms of responsibility. A gentleman of a husband doesn't just fulfill the basic rights. He goes way beyond that. Like our wives go way beyond the call of duty for us as well. Whether it's opening the door, whether it's, we find it unmanly that I must massage my wife's feet, or I must rub her back, or I must spoil her, or I must treat her, I must help her do the dishes, I must help her clean up after a meal. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did those things. Why can't we do it? Sometimes we get agitated if she tells us, you go buy the bread and milk today. You say, no, wow, I'm working the whole day, 4 hours and stuck in traffic, and I'm putting food on the table, and I can't do. No, there's absolutely nothing wrong in assisting with those things. A key part of being a gentleman is to know your wife's desires and aspirations. Many men are so self-centered that they expect the wife and the children and everyone to kind of plug into their aspirations and their needs in life, totally neglecting, oblivious, not even neglecting. Neglecting is but you don't do something about it. Totally oblivious to what their wives' aspirations and desires and goals are in life. You need to know this. You need to speak to them. You need to know what your wife likes, what she wants to achieve, what makes her happy, what she needs to do from time to time in order to be able to fulfill that. It's not to say that your wife will necessarily want to go to the moon or that she would want to visit an exotic place every month, but she may have certain dreams and aspirations. Maybe she likes to do something. Maybe she wants to visit a particular place. Maybe she wants to study something. Maybe she wants to contribute to the community in some way. You've got to talk to her about that, know it, and then see how best to accommodate it in the same way that she does that for you. I think tone is very important. Most problems is not in what is said. Most problems arise from how it is said. Sometimes you can also say, I love you, but it generates a bad response because of the manner in which it is said, the occasion. You've got to understand what tone to use. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's seerah is replete with such examples. Even if you need to say something very stern, even if you need to rebuke, even if you need to criticize, but tone makes all the difference. The last point perhaps we'll share here in terms of how to become a gentleman is that don't go out to your family and friends and vent about the shortcomings of your wife. We all have shortcomings. Unless it's of a nature now where the marriage is going to break, if there's no outside intervention, then you choose the appropriate person. Not necessarily the closest person, appropriate person. But like this, to just complain to your mother, to your sister, to your friends, to the neighbors, to people at the masjid about your wife, they lose respect for your wife. The children end up losing respect for your mother. And later on, you'll be embarrassed because people will start, remembering and retelling what you told them, and perhaps you even forgot that you told them, and it just adds to the embarrassment for both the husband and the wife. So those are some aspects that we should keep in mind in terms of being gentleman-like in our conduct with our wives.
Something else that we can talk about is taking care of your physical self. So many times we just let it go. You wake up, you're not interested in dressing, just looking terrible, and then it just sets such a negative tone for the day. And it's really so important for us as Muslims to take care of our physical selves, make sure our hair is neat, our clothes are clean, not wake up on a Sunday morning and wear that vest and sit in front of the TV with that cigarette in your mouth. There has to be that taking care of your physical being as
No,
well.
absolutely. Abdullah ibn Abbas was to say that the Quran says that women have similar rights to men, like men have over women, and he included this, that it's the right of my wife over me that I must look physically pleasant and I must, keep myself groomed. Men will groom differently to the manner in which women will groom, but Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam always carried a comb, he oiled his hair, he carried a miswak, he used the miswak repeatedly. He used the miswak before he entered the home for exactly that reason. He wore neat and clean clothing and attire. Keep a miswak in your car, keep some itar in your car, keep a brush in your car. You come from a hard day's work, make sure that you use the mirror in your car, you neaten your hair, you apply some itar, use the miswak. Weekends also, like you expect your wife to dress up for you, dress up for her. Wear clothing that she likes. Don't say, well, what do I care? If she likes something, then try and accommodate her likes in how you dress. That's part of being a gentleman, and that's part of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Another thing is compatibility. So many times, unfortunately, we go into a marriage and within a few weeks at compatibility, you realize that we're not compatible. And something besides just as from a normal non-dini point of view, but what's happening now a few times that you're hearing that the people are on two different spectrums. You might have one person with one religious rules and then another person on the other side, and that's causing friction when there's kids involved, when there's parents involved, but it's so important for compatibility.
Well, that's something you need to check before marriage, right? There's no absolute compatibility.
Yeah.
Even if you marry your cousin and both of you grew up in the same house, perhaps your parents were living under the same roof, there won't be absolute compatibility. You grow up eating the same food and under the same guidance and education and everything. But people's temperaments, their natural temperament is different. Two brothers, two sisters won't have the same temperament. So there's no absolute compatibility, but there are certain aspects that you need to keep in mind in terms of compatibility before you get married. That said, once you get married, there's a lot of accommodation that needs to happen. Men need to understand that women move out of their homes into your homes. They give up much more in terms of the manner in which our marriages usually take place. And therefore, the man has to be much more accommodating. Maturity. You don't have to agree on everything. You don't have to have the same, one spouse can be sensitive, the other one can be, not sensitive. One spouse can be a very deep thinker, the other one is just, a surface, superficial kind of individual. But you need to find each other, and you need to find common ground, and you need to develop an understanding, and with that understanding, a level of tolerance, and that is how you will coexist.
It's really important. Molana, we're going to conclude very soon, but something that I'd also like to speak about is the role of a father. We've spoken about how our relationship as men would be with our wives, but also another very important relationship is between the father and his children, his father and his sons, on the one hand, father and his daughters on the other hand. And the father is somebody that a lot of people look up to. Most kids especially their daughters, look up to their father. Sons normally have that sweeter relationship with their mothers, but the father is the important person in, in all people's lives, and the importance of being a good father, a father that communicates and not just screams and swears and shouts, but just a father who builds a relationship with his children.
Yeah. And the best way to show your children how to treat a woman is to show them physically how you treat their mother. Even when you have conflict, how you resolve the conflict, even if you have disagreement, how you do that. Men mustn't come in, like they talk about those men who are like cats outside but like lions inside. Outside, he can't even meow, but inside, he's just roaring all the time, at each person, feeling because I am the head of this household, I'm the man here, I bring in the money, it's my house, it's my roof, it's my this, my that, so I can talk to anybody how I want. That's against the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, whilst growing up, the sons tend to have a special relationship with their mothers. The daughters tend to have a special relationship with their fathers. Later on in life, perhaps the boys then gravitate more to the father, the girls gravitate more to the mother, whichever way. But you've got to lead by example. Otherwise, your own children are going to go into their homes then screaming, shouting, demanding, throwing tantrums. And you would be responsible for that cycle then perpetuating, because it will move on from generation to generation. So you've got to show them what it means to be a man in light of the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You've got to be more tolerant, you've got to be more accommodating, and you've got to show greater level of maturity.
Mulana, finally, being a father, it also means sharing your children's interests with them, playing an active role in their lives. So many times we notice that the mother is taking that interest. She's going to the school functions, she's doing the homework. We understand maybe most dads are working the whole day, they're tired when they come home, but it's really important for the father to play that role of, I'm interested. What did you learn at school today?
Absolutely.
What did you read in madrasa today? It doesn't only have to be, okay, we both support Man United, so we'll enjoy that 1.5 hours on a Saturday. There has to be more significant interest and more solid, less superficial connection between the father and his children.
It comes back to connectivity. How we spoke extensively about how to connect with your wife. The way you connect with your children is to take an interest in their lives. To engage them, you also then help them and train them how to think. So children will make random remarks. Say something happened in the masjid, and you'll hear your kids talking about it. Oh yeah, do you know that Maulana, he spoke too long, and then that uncle was complaining, and that uncle said he's no more going to come here for Jummah because the Maulana speaks too long. That's the time to strike up a conversation. There's a time to tell them that, what, if you value something, will it really make a difference if it was 5 minutes longer? If you're watching a soccer match and they say extra time, don't you get excited? Even though it's late at night and your eyes are closing and you got school the next morning, but you get excited because you value the match. So if you value the talk and you value the knowledge of deen, but at the same time, you must also value other people's time. If you know people need to be at a place at a particular time, don't unnecessarily prolong your talk so that they become inconvenienced. That you've got to be relevant in that way. Yeah. You hear them talking about school, that teacher like this and then Appa like that. That's the time to strike up a conversation. And you've got to be there for the key moments. You may not be there as often as the mother, if the mother is a housewife and you're a working husband, but you've got to adjust your schedule to be there for some of the key milestones, because that's when they're looking for recognition. They're looking for validation. They come running with that report, with so much of enthusiasm. Look at it, study it, give constructive feedback. Don't say, oh, mashallah, well done, well done. Then they also know you just be very superficial, say, oh, okay, wow, I'm impressed. Your mark for, say, fiqh has really improved from last term. I noticed that. Now they get happy. And then even if you give a bit of criticism, they take it in the right spirit. You know what, but I'm not too pleased with your Quran mark, I think your Quran mark, you can do better. Now you've actually taken interest to read it, to show them that, I'm interested in what you're doing. I'm interested in your life. You're teaching them on the one hand what they need to do later in life, but at the same time, you're helping to build them. You ask them, what happened here? Why? Then, why are you below the class aggregate? For this particular subject, and you hear an answer and you then give us a solution. So you've got to connect with your children by taking an interest in what happens in their lives.
Mulana, Jazakallah so much for your time. It's really important. It's a really important topic that we discussed this evening. Sometimes we take these things for granted. We think we know everything, and it's really important every now and then to have these shows to and for us to practice on it. Now, inshallah, Allah give us the ability to practice upon what
Ameen.
we've learned today. Mulana, Jazakallah so much for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
To our viewers out there, we hope you enjoyed the show. Inshallah, in the next few weeks or months, we'll try and do more of this kind of shows every now and then, because I think it's really important that we start talking and bringing these topics out. And if one person can make a change, then I think it's a job well done. From all of us in the team, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.